For 5 years, Elijah Brooks never questioned his promise. Despite mounting bills and sleepless nights, he faithfully sent $300 to his mother-in-law Ruth every month, a sacred vow made to Sarah before she lost her battle with cancer. But when Elijah noticed something unusual about the handwriting on an old funeral note, he began unraveling a terrifying conspiracy. Everything he believed about his wife's death and his duty to her mother was a carefully constructed lie. The monthly payments weren't keeping a grieving widow afloat. They were funding a criminal network that had stolen 5 years of his life and $18,000 of his daughter's future. Now Elijah faced a choice that would either destroy him or set him free. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping story, subscribe to the channel so you never miss these real-life revelations. Hit like if you're ready to uncover the truth, and comment where you're watching from: Chicago, Atlanta, or maybe Houston. All right, let's continue with Elijah as he discovers what really happened to the woman he loved. Elijah Brooks stood at his kitchen counter, the glow of his banking app casting shadows across his weathered face. $300. Same amount, same day of the month. Same account number burned into his memory after 60 transactions. 5 years and 2 months had passed since Sarah's funeral, yet his fingers still trembled over the confirm button every single time. Not because he doubted the promise. Sarah had made him swear. And you don't break a vow to your dying wife. That kind of promise was sacred, written in grief and sealed with tears. But tonight, something felt different. The kitchen light flickered, a reminder that the electric company had sent their final notice 3 days ago. In the living room, his 8-year-old daughter Zara sat doing homework by the fading daylight, pretending she didn't notice they were one missed payment away from darkness. Earlier, she'd asked if they could order pizza for her birthday next week. The shame in Elijah's chest when he'd said, maybe, still burned. He glanced at the funeral program. Sitting on the counter, he'd pulled it out to file with other important papers. Sarah's mother, Ruth, had given it to him that terrible day, her hand shaking as she'd written her bank details on the back. "She wanted you to take care of me," Ruth had whispered through tears. It's what she would have wanted. But now, holding that yellowed paper next to the bank account confirmation on his phone, Elijah noticed something that made his blood run cold. The handwriting didn't match. Not even close. The elegant loops on the funeral note looked nothing like the cramped, hurried scrawl Ruth had used when she'd written her account number. His electrician's eye, trained to spot the smallest inconsistencies in wiring diagrams, suddenly saw the discrepancy with crystal clarity. Elijah set down his phone, his heart pounding. 5 years, 60 payments, $18,000 sent to a woman who claimed to be surviving on his generosity alone. A woman who said his checks were all that kept her fed and housed, who sent him tearful thank you cards every few months, who called him the son I never had. He opened his banking history, scrolling back through years of transactions. All identical, all automated, all going to an account he'd never questioned. Because grief doesn't leave room for suspicion, and guilt doesn't permit doubt. His phone buzzed. A text from Ruth. "Elijah, honey, this month's rent is due tomorrow. Did the payment go through yet? God bless you for keeping your promise to my angel." Elijah stared at the message, then back at the mismatched handwriting. The $18,000 he'd sent over the years suddenly felt less like an act of love and more like ransom payments to a ghost. Or worse, to someone who was never a ghost at all. He wasn't just a widower honoring his wife's memory anymore. He was a man who suspected he'd been played. And if he was right, the woman he'd mourned for 5 years might be the one who orchestrated it all. The transfer sat incomplete on his screen. For the first time in 61 months, Elijah Brooks closed the app without pressing send. Elijah Brooks never imagined that cleaning out his junk drawer would shatter his entire world. As he sorted through 5 years of accumulated debris, his fingers brushed against a creased envelope, the sympathy card Ruth had sent him the week after Sarah's funeral. He opened it absently, remembering how her words had felt like a lifeline during those dark days. "My precious daughter is with the angels now. Thank you for being there for me in this impossible time." But as Elijah set the card down next to the sticky note where Ruth had scribbled her bank account information 3 months ago, his breath caught. The handwriting looked completely different. The sympathy card featured elegant, flowing script with carefully dotted I's and sweeping capital letters. The bank details were written in cramped, almost masculine block letters that slanted sharply to the right. His hands trembled as he pulled out more documents. Birthday cards from Ruth over the years, all in that same elegant script. Yet every piece of banking information, account numbers, routing codes, even her signature on the power of attorney she'd asked him to witness last year, looked like it had been written by a completely different person. Elijah grabbed his phone and pulled up photos from Sarah's funeral. There, in the guest book, was Ruth's signature. Elegant, flowing, nothing like the harsh block letters on the banking forms. His chest tightened as a horrifying possibility emerged from the fog of his grief. What if the woman receiving his money wasn't actually Ruth Williams? What if someone had been impersonating her, collecting $300 every month while he struggled to keep his lights on? Or worse, what if Ruth herself was behind something even darker than identity theft? He dialed Ruth's number with shaking fingers, but as the phone rang, Elijah realized he had no idea what question to even ask. How do you accuse your dead wife's mother of forgery without sounding insane? The call went to voicemail. Ruth's sweet, grandmotherly voice asked him to leave a message. Elijah hung up and stared at the two handwriting samples side by side. Somewhere in this discrepancy was a truth that terrified him, and he was about to chase it down, no matter where it led. Troy Mitchell had been Elijah's best friend since high school, which was the only reason Elijah felt comfortable showing up at First National Bank during Troy's shift with a stack of suspicious documents and a wild theory. Troy worked as a senior loan officer, and more importantly, he had access to account verification systems that could answer questions Elijah didn't want to ask out loud. "Man, you look terrible," Troy said, ushering Elijah into his office and closing the door. "What's going on?" Elijah spread the papers across Troy's desk, the sympathy card, the bank account details, the power of attorney, all marked with sticky notes highlighting the handwriting differences. "I need you to tell me I'm crazy. I need you to tell me grief is making me see things that aren't there." Troy studied the documents carefully, his expression shifting from concern to alarm. "Elijah, these don't look like the same person wrote them. Not even close. Can you check the account? The one I've been sending money to." Troy hesitated. "That's technically against policy unless there's suspected fraud." "Troy, I've sent $18,000 to this account over 5 years. If someone's running a scam using a dead woman's name, isn't that fraud?" The logic was sound enough. Troy turned to his computer, typing rapidly. Minutes stretched into an eternity as Elijah watched his friend's face cycle through confusion, then shock, then something approaching horror. "Elijah, this account isn't registered to Ruth Williams." The room tilted. "What? It's registered to something called Riverside Property Management, LLC. The account was opened 6 years ago, a year before Sarah died." Troy clicked through several more screens. "And here's where it gets really weird. The money you're sending? It's not staying in that account. It's being transferred out within 24 hours, every single time." "Transferred where?" "Multiple locations. Some to an account in Florida. Some to what looks like a rental deposit service. Some to—" Troy stopped, his face going pale. "Elijah, one of the recent transfers went to a prenatal care clinic in Miami." Elijah felt like he'd been struck by lightning. "Prenatal? As in pregnancy?" "Yeah. The memo line says S. Brooks, obstetrics appointment." Troy looked up, and Elijah saw his own terror reflected in his friend's eyes. "Elijah, S. Brooks was your wife's name." The implications crashed over Elijah like a tidal wave. Sarah had died 5 years ago. He'd watched them lower her casket into the ground. He'd scattered rose petals on the polished wood and listened to the pastor quote scripture about eternal rest. But someone named S. Brooks was apparently seeing an obstetrician in Miami, and the money trail led straight from Elijah's bank account to her medical bills. "Give me the address," Elijah whispered. "The Riverside Property Management address." Troy scribbled it on a sticky note, his hand shaking. "Elijah, if this is what I think it is, you need to call the police." But Elijah was already out the door, the address burning in his pocket like a lit fuse. If Sarah Brooks was alive somewhere, receiving his money and living a secret life, he was going to find her. And when he did, someone was going to answer for the 5 years of grief they'd stolen from him. Chapter 3. The Ghost at Riverside. The Riverside address led to a modest apartment complex on the south side of Chicago, the kind of place where residents minded their own business and security cameras captured everything. Elijah sat in his car across the street for 20 minutes, trying to steady his breathing and silence. The voice in his head screaming that this was insane. Dead people stayed dead. Sarah was gone. This was all some horrible misunderstanding. But the prenatal clinic charge wouldn't leave his mind. Finally, Elijah walked to the building's management office. A tired-looking woman in her 50s glanced up from her crossword puzzle. "Help you. I'm trying to reach one of your tenants. Riverside Property Management LLC. I've been sending payments to their account and need to verify the address." The woman's eyes narrowed. "We don't give out tenant information." Elijah pulled out his phone, showing her the bank transfer history. "Ma'am, I've sent $18,000 to an account connected to this building. I just need to know if I've been scammed." Something in his desperation must have moved her. She sighed and turned to her computer. Riverside Property Management Rents Unit. For 12. They've had it for 6 years. Paid in full every year. Never any complaints. She paused. "Though it's weird. The lease is under a woman's name, but we almost never see her. Mail comes, packages get delivered, but the unit might as well be empty." "What's the woman's name?" "Can't tell you that. But—" She glanced at the hallway, then back at Elijah with something like pity. "The security footage is backed up on our cloud system. If someone wanted to review it for suspicious activity, and if they knew the password was Riverside 2019, well, I can't stop what I don't see." She slid a piece of paper across the desk with a login URL, then returned to her crossword puzzle. Elijah took the hint. In his car, Elijah logged into the security system with shaking hands. The footage archive went back 2 years. He selected Unit 412's hallway camera and started scanning through recent weeks, fast-forwarding through empty corridors and occasional delivery people. Then he saw her. The timestamp read 3 days ago, 2:47 p.m. A woman in a sundress and oversized sunglasses emerged from Unit 412, carrying a CVS pharmacy bag. She paused to lock the door, and for just a moment, she turned toward the camera. Elijah's phone slipped from his hands. It was Sarah, older, with shorter hair and a fuller frame, but unmistakably his wife. The woman he'd buried 5 years ago was standing in an apartment hallway, very much alive, one hand resting protectively on what looked like a small baby bump. He rewound the footage and watched again. And again. Each time, the impossible became more undeniable. The way she tucked her hair behind her left ear. The slight limp from the knee surgery she'd had in college. The gold bracelet he'd given her for their 2nd anniversary, still on her wrist. Elijah's grief transformed into rage, so pure it felt like electricity in his veins. She'd faked her death. She'd let him mourn. She'd let him struggle to send money to her mother while his own bills piled up and his daughter Zara went without. She'd stolen his life savings, his peace of mind, and 5 years he could never get back. And now she was pregnant with someone else's child, living off his money while he ate ramen for dinner and told Zara they couldn't afford new school clothes. Elijah saved the footage to his phone and started the engine. But he wasn't going to the police. Not yet. First, he needed answers. And he knew exactly who was going to give them to him, whether she wanted to or not. Marcus Reed's office was located above, a dry cleaner in a part of Chicago, where private investigators thrived on divorce cases and insurance fraud. Elijah had found him through a desperate Google search for fake death investigation, and now he sat across from a man who looked more like a college professor than a detective. Wire-rimmed glasses, cardigan sweater, coffee mug that read, "Trust issues pay my bills." "Mr. Brooks, I've seen a lot in 15 years, but this." Marcus spread the documents across his desk, the security footage, the bank records, the handwriting samples, the medical billing statement. "This is extraordinary. If what you're showing me is real, we're not talking about a simple scam. We're talking about faking a death, forging documents, insurance fraud, and conspiracy. This is federal territory." "I don't care about federal anything right now," Elijah said, his voice tight. "I need to know if my wife is alive. I need to know if I buried an empty casket or someone else's remains. I need the truth." Marcus nodded slowly. "The death certificate is the key. If it's fraudulent, everything unravels. I have a contact at the county records office who owes me a favor. Give me 48 hours. Those 48 hours were the longest of Elijah's life. He went through the motions at work, running electrical repairs on autopilot. Came home to Zara, who sensed something was wrong but didn't ask, and barely slept. When Marcus finally called, Elijah was in his car before the first ring finished. Marcus's office was quieter this time, the overhead light creating sharp shadows across his grave face. "Sit down, Elijah. You're going to need to." The file Marcus slid across the desk was thin but devastating. "Your wife's death certificate is real, as in, it's a genuine document filed with the county. But the details are fabricated. I had my contact pull the original autopsy report and compare it to the death certificate. And the certificate says Sarah Brooks, age 32, died of metastatic breast cancer at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. But the autopsy report filed that same week is for a Jane Doe, approximate age 65, cause of death unknown. Found deceased in a park shelter. No identification, no next of kin. She was cremated 5 days later at the county's expense." Elijah felt sick. "Are you saying the ashes we buried weren't your wife?" "Elijah, someone switched the records. Someone with access to both the hospital and the county coroner's office processed fake paperwork to create a death certificate for a living woman while simultaneously cremating an unidentified body and releasing those ashes." 2. Marcus checked his notes. Ruth Williams, listed as next of kin. Ruth. The name tasted like poison. "There's more. I checked the hospital records. Sarah Brooks was admitted for a routine cancer screening 3 weeks before her supposed death. The screening came back completely clean. No cancer. No terminal diagnosis. Nothing. But 2 weeks later, someone updated her medical file to show stage 4 metastatic cancer with a prognosis of days to live. The doctor listed on that update." Marcus turned his laptop screen toward Elijah. "Dr. Raymond Foster. He lost his medical license 4 years ago for selling prescriptions and falsifying records. Last known address, Miami, Florida." The pieces were clicking together like a nightmare puzzle. The apartment in Riverside. The money transfers to Florida. The prenatal clinic. The fake death certificate. The switched ashes. All of it orchestrated by people who knew exactly what they were doing. "This wasn't an impulse decision," Marcus said quietly. "This was planned. Months, maybe years in advance. The question is why? What was worth faking her death? What was she running from or running toward?" Elijah pulled out his phone and opened his insurance app. His hands shook as he navigated to the life insurance policy he'd taken out when he and Sarah got married. The policy he'd completely forgotten about after her death because he'd been drowning in grief and funeral expenses. The policy he'd never filed a claim on because Ruth had told him Sarah wanted her death to be simple. No fuss, no insurance claims. Just a quiet burial and moving on. The beneficiary page loaded. Elijah's blood turned to ice. "I know why," he whispered. "The life insurance policy. $500,000. And according to this, Sarah changed the beneficiary 3 months before she died. It's not me anymore." Marcus leaned forward. "Who is it?" "Ruth Williams. Her mother, who apparently helped her fake her death, cremate a stranger's body, and now receives $300 a month from me as hush money or conscience payment or God knows what." The rage Elijah had felt before was nothing compared to the fury building in his chest now. They hadn't just stolen his money. They'd stolen his wife, his grief, his trust, and $500,000 in insurance. Money that should have secured Zara's future. And somewhere in Miami, Sarah was living off that money, pregnant and happy, while he scraped by on electrician wages and guilt. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked. Elijah stood up, his decision crystallizing into cold determination. "I want evidence that will hold up in court. I want the FBI involved. And I want my life back. That's going to take time. Building a federal case. Then we start now. Because this ends. One way or another, the truth comes out. And everyone who did this pays for what they took from me." Marcus extended his hand. "Then let's get to work." The Midwest. Mutual Insurance Headquarters loomed like a glass monument to broken promises as Elijah walked through the revolving doors. He'd called ahead, claiming he needed to update his beneficiary information, which was technically true. What he didn't mention was that he was about to demand answers about the $500,000 paid out on a fraudulent death claim. The claims adjuster, a woman named Patricia Hoffman, greeted him with professional sympathy that made Elijah's skin crawl. She'd probably perfected that expression, consoling hundreds of grieving families while processing their life insurance payouts. "Mr. Brooks, I pulled your late wife's file as requested. How can I help you today? Elijah slid a folder across her desk. I need you to review this claim again. Specifically, I need to know when the beneficiary was changed and who authorized the payout. Patricia's smile faltered as she opened the folder and saw the security footage stills of Sarah alive and well. Mr. Brooks, I don't understand. My wife isn't dead. She faked her death 5 years ago, and someone in your company paid out $500,000 without properly verifying the claim. I need to know how that happened. The color drained from Patricia's face. She turned to her computer, typing frantically. This is, Mr. Brooks, if what you're saying is true, this is a criminal matter. I need to involve my supervisor and possibly our fraud investigation unit. Good. Do that. But first, answer my questions. Patricia's hands shook as she pulled up the digital file. The beneficiary change was submitted 3 months before Mrs. Brooks's reported death. It was filed online through our customer portal using your wife's login credentials and verified with her social security number and date of birth. The change designated Ruth Williams, her mother, as the sole beneficiary. And you just accepted that? No verification call. No questions about why a 32-year-old woman would suddenly remove her husband as beneficiary. Our policy allows beneficiary changes without spousal consent if Patricia trailed off, reading something on her screen that made her face go ashen. Oh God, the change was flagged. Our system automatically flags sudden beneficiary changes, especially large policies. A fraud investigator was supposed to follow up within 30 days. And did they? According to the notes, yes. Investigator named Carol Jennings called Mrs. Brooks and verified her intention to change the beneficiary. Mrs. Brooks stated that you and she were going through marital difficulties and she wanted to ensure her mother would be taken care of in the event of her death. The investigator noted that Mrs. Brooks sounded coherent and willing, so the change was approved. Elijah felt like he'd been punched. When was that call made? 2 months before her death. So Sarah had been planning this for at least 5 months, building the paper trail, creating the story, setting up the fraud piece by piece, while sleeping next to him and kissing him goodbye every morning. The betrayal went deeper than he'd imagined. And the death claim? When was it filed? Patricia clicked through several screens. The claim was submitted by Ruth Williams 1 week after the death. Certificate was issued. She provided the death certificate, cremation receipt, and a notarized letter stating that Mrs. Brooks had expressed wishes for the insurance money to support her mother's medical expenses. Medical expenses? Ruth's not sick. She's never been sick. The letter claimed she had early-stage Alzheimer's and needed memory care. Patricia pulled up an attached document. The payout was approved and processed within 2 weeks. Standard procedure for clear-cut cases with proper documentation. The check for $500,000 was mailed to Ruth Williams at, she squinted at the screen, a P.O. box in Schaumburg. Not Ruth's home address. A P.O. box in a completely different town. Another layer of deception. Who approved the payout? The claims supervisor at the time was, oh no. Patricia's voice dropped to a whisper. Gregory Foster. He left the company 4 years ago under investigation for approving fraudulent claims. He was Ruth's nephew. The conspiracy spread wider. Foster, the same last name as the doctor, who'd falsified Sarah's medical records. It was all connected. A network of people working together to create a perfect fraud. I need copies of everything, Elijah said, his voice deadly calm. Every document, every note, every piece of this claim. And I need the contact information for your fraud investigation department. Patricia was already printing, her professional composure crumbling. Mr. Brooks, I am so sorry. If we'd known. You should have known. Your own system flagged it as suspicious. And you approved it anyway because someone on the inside was helping them steal from me. 20 minutes later, Elijah walked out of Midwest Mutual with a flash drive, full of evidence and a growing list of co-conspirators. The insurance fraud investigator had listened to his story with increasing alarm and promised to contact federal authorities immediately. But Elijah wasn't waiting for federal authorities. He had one more person to confront before he let the law take over. And this time, he was going to record every word. He pulled out his phone and texted Ruth. We need to talk about next month's payment. Can we meet tomorrow? The response came within seconds. Of course, sweetheart. Lincoln Park at noon? The bench by the pond where Sarah used to feed the ducks? The manipulation in that message invoking Sarah's memory. Playing the sweet mother-in-law made Elijah want to scream. But instead, he typed back, "Perfect. See you then." Tomorrow, Ruth Williams was going to confess to everything, and Elijah was going to make sure it was all captured on tape. Elijah sat at his kitchen table at 11:47 p.m. on the last day of the month, his phone screen glowing with the familiar banking app interface. For 60 consecutive months, he'd made this transfer without fail. $300 to Ruth Williams, sent with a prayer for Sarah's soul and a belief that he was honoring his wife's final wishes. Tonight, for the first time in 5 years, Elijah pressed cancel instead of confirm. The transaction disappeared. The money stayed in his account. And somewhere across Chicago, an alarm bell started ringing in Ruth's carefully constructed fraud network. Elijah didn't have to wait long. His phone rang at 7:23 a.m., Ruth's name flashing on the screen. He let it ring 4 times before answering, his voice deliberately groggy. "Ruth? What's wrong?" "It's early." "Elijah, honey, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I just checked my account and this month's payment didn't come through. I know you're always so reliable, so I wanted to make sure everything's okay. Did your bank have some kind of problem?" The concern in her voice sounded genuine. 5 years of practice had made her a master manipulator. "Oh God, Ruth, I'm so sorry. Things have been really tight this month. Zara needed emergency dental work, and I had to choose between that and the transfer. I was going to call you today and explain." Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, "I understand, sweetheart. Family comes first. But you know my rent is due, and without that money, I'm not sure how I'll manage. Sarah would want you to keep your promise." There it was. The guilt trip. The invocation of his dead wife's name to manipulate him into continuing the payments. I know. I'll try to get you something by next week. Maybe half. I just need a little time." Another pause, longer this time. When Ruth spoke again, her voice had an edge he'd never heard before. "Elijah, I don't think you understand. That money isn't optional. It's what Sarah wanted. It's your duty. And if you're having trouble remembering your obligations, maybe I need to remind you of certain things." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. "What do you mean?" "I mean that Sarah trusted you to take care of her mother. She made you promise. And I'd hate to think you're the kind of man who breaks promises to the dead. People might wonder what kind of husband you really were. What kind of man you are." Elijah's grip on the phone tightened. "Are you threatening me, Ruth?" "Threatening? Oh, honey, no. I'm just saying that reputations matter. Zara's school, your church, your workplace. People form opinions based on what they hear. And if they heard that you abandoned your poor, elderly mother-in-law after promising your dying wife you'd care for her, well, that wouldn't reflect well on you, would it?" There it was. Blackmail dressed up in grandmother's clothing. "I see." Elijah kept his voice neutral, even as rage boiled in his chest. "You're right. I need to do better. Can we meet tomorrow? I want to discuss a more permanent solution. Maybe I could set up an automatic transfer so you never have to worry again." The shift in her tone was immediate. "Oh, Elijah, that would be wonderful. You're such a good man." Sarah chose well. "Lincoln Park? The bench by the pond at noon. Perfect. I'll bring the account paperwork, and we can get everything sorted out." "Thank you, sweetheart. Sarah's looking down on you with such pride." Elijah hung up and immediately texted Marcus Reed. "She took the bait. Tomorrow at noon. I need that wire equipment ready." The response came instantly. "Already coordinated with the FBI. They'll prep you. At 10 a.m. Don't communicate with her again until then." Elijah set his phone down and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Ruth had threatened him, attempted to blackmail him, and confirmed that the money was more important to her than her cover story. On tape, that would be damning enough. But he wasn't done. He had one more message to send. He pulled up the security footage from Riverside Apartments, found the clearest image of Sarah's face, and saved it to his phone. Then he created a new email address to the prenatal clinic in Miami, with the subject line, "Insurance Fraud Alert, Sarah Brooks." The email was simple. "The woman using this identity and your services is living under a false identity after faking her death for insurance fraud. Her real name is Sarah Brooks. She was declared dead in Chicago 5 years ago. You're billing a dead woman. Attached as proof, she's very much alive. I'm her legal husband, and I'm notifying you that any insurance claims filed under her name are fraudulent. The FBI has been contacted." He attached the security footage and his marriage certificate, then hovered his finger over send. This would alert Sarah that he knew. It would panic her, possibly send her running. But it would also cut off her access to medical care under a false identity and create another paper trail of fraud. Elijah pressed send. Within an hour, his phone exploded with texts from an unknown Florida number. Who is this? How did you get this number? Elijah. Elijah, please, we need to talk. It's not what you think. I can explain everything. Please don't do this. He blocked the number and turned off his phone. Tomorrow, he'd face Ruth. And soon after that, the FBI would face Sarah. Both of them would answer for what they'd stolen. But tonight, Elijah sat in his kitchen and felt something he hadn't experienced in 5 years. The savage satisfaction of fighting back. The FBI wire technician pressed the final piece of tape against Elijah's chest, securing the tiny microphone beneath his shirt. Don't touch it, don't adjust it. And for God's sake, don't mention that you're wearing it. Just have a normal conversation and let her do the talking. Special Agent Victoria Chun stood by the window of the surveillance van parked 2 blocks from Lincoln Park's duck pond. We'll have 3 agents positioned around the park in civilian clothes. If at any point you feel unsafe, use the code phrase, I need to check on Zara, and we'll move in immediately. Elijah nodded, his heart hammering against the wire. After 5 years of being a victim, he was about to become the instrument of justice. At 11:58 a.m., he walked to the familiar bench, where he'd scattered Sarah's ashes, or what he'd thought were her ashes, into the pond. The memory felt like acid now. Ruth arrived precisely at noon, wearing a cardigan and carrying her oversized purse, looking every bit the sweet grandmother she pretended to be. She smiled and opened her arms for a hug. Elijah forced himself to embrace her, feeling the wire press against his chest as she squeezed him. Thank you for meeting me, sweetheart. I know times are hard, but we'll figure this out together. They sat on the bench. Elijah pulled out his phone as if checking his banking app. Before we set up the automatic transfer, I just want to clarify a few things. The money I send you, it's been going to your rent, right? Of course. My fixed income barely covers utilities. Without you, I'd be homeless. And you're living at the same address? The one you gave me 5 years ago. A flicker of something crossed her face. Yes, why? Just making sure the routing information is correct. I'd hate for the money to go to the wrong place. Elijah kept his voice casual. Though I have to say, Ruth, I've been wondering something. Why didn't you just file for Sarah's life insurance? That would have covered your expenses for years. Ruth's smile tightened. Sarah wanted that money to go to you and Zara. I couldn't take that. Really? Because I checked with Midwest Mutual Insurance. They have a record of a $500,000 payout to A. Ruth Williams 5 years ago. Same week Sarah died. The color drained from Ruth's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Because the insurance company is very interested in talking to you about that claim, especially since they've discovered some irregularities with the death certificate. Ruth stood abruptly. Elijah, I think there's been some kind of mistake. Sit down, Ruth. Elijah's voice was steel. Or I start making phone calls right now, starting with the fraud division of the FBI. She sat, her hands trembling. I know everything, Elijah continued. I know about the fake death certificate. I know about the Jane Doe ashes. I know about the apartment in Riverside and the money transfers to Florida. I know about Dr. Foster and Gregory Foster and the entire network you've been running. And most importantly, I know that Sarah is alive. Ruth's face crumbled. For a moment, Elijah thought she might run. But instead, she started to cry. And this time, the tears looked real. You don't understand what you've done, she whispered. Elijah, this is bigger than you think. You need to stop asking questions and keep sending the money. For your own safety. My safety? You're the one who should be worried about safety. You committed insurance fraud, falsified a death certificate, and extorted me for 5 years. The FBI is going to. The FBI can't protect you from them. Ruth grabbed his arm, her grip desperate. Elijah, please listen to me. I didn't want to do this. They made me. The people Sarah got involved with, they're dangerous. They're the ones who planned everything. I'm just a messenger. Who? Who made you do this? Ruth looked around the park frantically, as if expecting someone to emerge from behind a tree. It's an organization. They fake deaths for people who need to disappear. Witness protection for people who can't go to the authorities. New identities, new lives, everything. But it costs money. Lots of money. And they take their cut. And Sarah needed to disappear? From what? From her debts. From the people she owed. Elijah, Your wife wasn't who you thought she was. She was gambling online, thousands of dollars a week. She owed the wrong people over $200,000. They were threatening her, threatening you and Zara. The only way out was to die and start over. Elijah's mind reeled. So she faked her death, collected the insurance money, and left me holding the bag while she runs off to Florida to live her new life? And you helped her? I didn't have a choice. They said if I didn't help, they'd hurt her. Hurt you. Hurt Zara. So I did what they told me. I filed the claim, I set up the accounts. I took the monthly payments and forwarded them to the handlers. I'm a victim too. Handlers? This is an organization? Who runs it? Ruth's tears were flowing freely now. I don't know names. I just know a contact number and a code. They tell me what to do, and I do it. The $300 a month, that's their fee for keeping quiet, for maintaining the network, for making sure no one looks too closely at the records. Elijah leaned back, processing this new layer of conspiracy. And Sarah? Where is she? Miami, living under the name Kelly Wade. She's pregnant with her new husband's baby, a man she met through the network, someone else who needed to disappear. Ruth's voice turned bitter. She got her fresh start. New identity, new life, new family. All funded by your money and the insurance fraud. Does she know I've been sending you money? She thinks it's part of the deal, that you're paying for her protection. She doesn't know I'm supposed to be her dead mother. That part was my idea, to make you think you were honoring her wishes. Easier to get you to pay voluntarily than to threaten you. There it was. The full confession. The insurance fraud. The organization, Sarah's location. The monthly extortion scheme. All recorded on the FBI wire. Elijah stood, looking down at the woman who'd manipulated him for 5 years. You're right about one thing, Ruth. This is bigger than I thought. But not bigger than the FBI. Ruth's eyes widened as 3 agents emerged from positions around the park, converging on the bench with badges visible. Ruth Williams, you're under arrest for insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and extortion, Agent Chen announced, pulling out handcuffs. Ruth looked at Elijah with something between hatred and despair. You've killed us both. The organization doesn't let loose and survive. You have no idea what you've done. I've ended 5 years of lies, Elijah said coldly. And now you're going to tell the FBI everything about this organization. Every name, every code, every contact. Because if you don't, you'll spend the rest of your life in federal prison. As the agents led Ruth away, she looked back at Elijah one last time. Sarah really did love you, you know? In her own broken way. But love doesn't pay debts. And debts always come due. Elijah watched her disappear into the FBI van, then turned to Agent Chen. What happens now? Now we take down everyone involved. Starting with your wife. The FBI field office in Chicago was a maze of cubicles and conference rooms where Elijah spent the next 6 hours recounting every detail of his 5-year nightmare. Agent Chun led a team of 5 investigators who meticulously documented the paper trail, the wire recording, and Ruth's confession. The organization she mentioned. We've had whispers about something like this for years. Chun explained, spreading photos across the table. Groups that help people fake their deaths for a fee. Usually it's debt escape, like your wife. Sometimes it's domestic violence victims who can't access legitimate protection. Sometimes it's criminals evading prosecution. But we've never had someone on the inside willing to talk. Will Ruth cooperate? She's already started. She gave us the contact number and her handler's code. We're tracing it now. Chin pulled up a map on her laptop showing a location in Miami. More importantly, she confirmed your wife's location and her new identity. Kelly Wade, residing at a luxury condo complex in South Beach. We have agents en route now. Elijah's stomach twisted. After 5 years of believing Sarah was dead, he was about to face the truth that she'd been living in a beachfront condo, pregnant and happy, while he struggled to keep the lights on for Zara. I want to be there when you arrest her. Chin shook her head. That's not protocol. You're a civilian and a victim. The last thing we need is an emotional confrontation during an arrest. She's my wife. Or was. I deserve to see her face when she realizes it's over. Elijah, I've spent 5 years mourning a ghost. 5 years sending money to the people who helped her fake her death. I've earned this. Something in his voice made Chin reconsider. She exchanged glances with her partner, Agent Rodriguez, who shrugged. We can bring him on the transport. Keep him in the vehicle during the arrest. He doesn't make contact, doesn't interfere. Chin sighed. Fine. But you follow orders exactly, or I'll have you removed from the scene. Understood. 6 hours later, Elijah sat in an unmarked FBI van parked across from a gleaming glass tower on Ocean Drive. The Miami sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, the kind of view Sarah had always dreamed about. She'd gotten her paradise, just not with him. Target is in the building. A voice crackled over the radio. Unit 2407. 2 agents in the lobby, 2 on the stairwell, 2 at the elevator on the 24th floor. Elijah watched through tinted windows as 4 agents in windbreakers entered the building. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. Approaching the door now. Minutes stretched like hours. Then, FBI. Open the door. Through the van's surveillance equipment, Elijah could hear everything. The sound of a door opening. A woman's voice, Sarah's voice, older but unmistakable, saying, "What's going on? There must be some mistake. Kelly Wade, also known as Sarah Brooks. You're under arrest for insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and falsifying government documents." "I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Kelly Wade." "I've never heard of." "Ma'am, we have security footage, bank records, and testimony placing you in Chicago 5 years ago when you allegedly died of cancer. We know about the fake death certificate, the insurance payout, and the organization that helped you disappear. You have the right to remain silent." "Wait, please. I'm pregnant. I'm 7 months pregnant." "You can't. Medical personnel are standing by. You'll be examined at the Federal Detention Center. You're coming with us." The sound of handcuffs clicking. Sarah's voice rising in panic. "This is a mistake. Call my husband. Call David. He'll explain everything." "Your husband, David Wade? We're very interested in talking to him too, especially since our records show David Wade supposedly died in a car accident in Phoenix 3 years ago." Silence. Then Sarah's voice, smaller. "I want a lawyer." Smart choice. Elijah watched as agents emerged from the building with a woman in handcuffs. Even from a distance, even with shorter blonde hair instead of the long black hair he remembered, he recognized her. The way she walked, the tilt of her head, the gold bracelet still on her wrist. Sarah, Kelly, whatever she called herself now, looked around frantically as agents guided her toward a waiting vehicle. For just a moment, her eyes swept across the street and seemed to land on the tinted van where Elijah sat. He wondered if she could sense him there, if some part of her knew that her past had finally caught up to her. Then she was gone, loaded into the FBI vehicle and driven away. Chin turned to Elijah. "One more arrest to make. David Wade, her new husband. We tracked him to a luxury car dealership where he works under his fake identity. Turns out he's actually Marcus Chun, wanted for embezzlement in California. The organization set them up together, 2 people who needed to disappear. How many people are part of this network? Based on Ruth's information and our preliminary investigation, at least 30 fake deaths in the past 7 years. Maybe more. Your case is going to crack this wide open." Chin closed her laptop. "We'll need you to testify when this goes to trial. Both women will likely try to make deals. But with the evidence we have, they're looking at serious federal time." "Good." Elijah's voice was hollow. "They should pay for what they did." "They will." "And Elijah? The insurance company is reviewing your case. Since the death was fraudulent, the payout was illegitimate. You may be entitled to restitution." The money felt like the least important part now. Elijah had lost 5 years to a lie. No amount of restitution could give those back. As the FBI van pulled away from the Miami sunset, Elijah took one last look at the luxury tower where his supposedly dead wife had been living her new life. Then he turned away and headed home to Zara, to the real life he'd been living all along. Even when he thought he was living a lie. The federal courthouse in Chicago was imposing and cold. All marble columns and echoing hallways. Elijah sat in the witness room, waiting to be called, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. 7 months had passed since Ruth's arrest in Lincoln Park. 7 months of depositions, interviews, and sleepless nights. Marcus Reed sat beside him, now serving as a consultant for the FBI's investigation into the death-faking network. "You ready for this?" "I've been ready for 5 years." The bailiff opened the door. "Mr. Brooks, they're ready for you." The courtroom was packed. Elijah recognized some faces, Agent Chen, the insurance investigators, Marcus, even Troy from the bank. But his eyes went immediately to the defense tableware. Ruth Williams sat in an orange jumpsuit, looking 20 years older than when he'd last seen her. Next to her sat her public defender, shuffling papers nervously. Sarah, the prosecution had successfully argued she should be tried separately, would face her own trial next month. But today was about Ruth's role in the conspiracy. Elijah took the stand and placed his hand on the Bible. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do." The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah Mitchell, approached with a warm smile. "Mr. Brooks, can you tell the court how you first met the defendant, Ruth Williams? She was my mother-in-law, my wife Sarah's mother. I met her at our wedding 12 years ago. And what was your relationship like?" "Good. She was family. When Sarah got sick, or when I thought she got sick, Ruth was there for both of us. She visited the hospital, she helped with arrangements. She comforted me when Sarah died." "When you thought Sarah died?" "Yes, when I thought Sarah died." Mitchell pulled up a photograph on the courtroom screen, Elijah and Ruth at Sarah's funeral. Both in black, both crying. This was taken at the funeral. Would you say the defendant appeared to be genuinely grieving? Elijah stared at the photo, remembering that day. The crushing weight of loss. The way Ruth had held him while he sobbed. All of it an act. She seemed devastated. I believed her grief was real. "And after the funeral, what was your relationship with the defendant?" "She asked me to send her $300 every month. She said Sarah had made me promise to take care of her mother. That is what Sarah would have wanted." "And did you make this promise?" "No, I never promised anything like that. But I believed I had, because Ruth told me I did. Because I was so deep in grief. I couldn't remember those final days clearly. And I trusted her." Mitchell walked him through the 5 years of payments. The mounting financial pressure. The discovery of the handwriting discrepancy. Every step of his investigation. With each answer, Elijah watched Ruth's face grow more resigned. Finally, Mitchell played the wire recording from Lincoln Park. The courtroom fell silent as Ruth's voice filled the space, confessing to the insurance fraud, the organization, Sarah's location in Miami. "The FBI can't protect you from them. Elijah, please listen to me. I didn't want to do this. They made me." When the recording ended, Mitchell turned to Elijah. "Mr. Brooks, after everything the defendant did to you, the lies, the manipulation, the 5 years of fraud, do you believe her claim that she was forced to participate?" Elijah looked directly at Ruth. She wouldn't meet his eyes. "I believe she had choices. She could have told me the truth. She could have gone to the police. She could have refused to participate. Instead, she chose to help Sarah fake her death, collect $500,000, and then extort me for another $18,000. Those were her choices. Nobody forced her to cash those checks." The defense attorney tried to salvage the case during cross-examination, painting Ruth as a frightened elderly woman manipulated by a criminal organization. But the evidence was overwhelming. The fake death certificate with her signature, the insurance claim she'd filed, the bank accounts she'd controlled, the wire recording where she'd threatened Elijah's reputation. When the jury returned after only 3 hours of deliberation, their verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Ruth Williams to 8 years in federal prison, with restitution of $518,000 to Elijah and Midwest Mutual Insurance. As the bailiffs led Ruth away, she finally looked at Elijah, not with hatred or defiance, but with something that might have been regret, or maybe just resignation to consequences she'd always known would come. Elijah didn't look away until she was gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Agent Chin's team kept them at bay while Elijah made his way to his car. Marcus walked with him, clapping him on the shoulder. "You did good in there. How do you feel?" "Tired. Relieved. Angry that it took this long." Elijah paused at his car. "But mostly, I feel free. For 5 years, I've been living in the shadow of a lie. Now the truth is out there. Everyone knows what they did. Sarah's trial starts next month. Will you testify again?" "Every single time they ask me to. She deserves everything she's going to get." Elijah drove home through Chicago's evening traffic. But instead of going straight to his apartment, he detoured to Lincoln Park. He parked and walked to the bench by the duck pond. The same bench where he'd scattered what he thought were Sarah's ashes. The same bench where Ruth had confessed. But this time, Elijah didn't feel haunted by memories. He felt cleansed by truth. His phone buzzed. A text from Zara, who was staying with his sister during the trial. "How did it go, Dad?" Elijah smiled and typed back. Justice was served. I'll tell you all about it when I pick you up tomorrow. I love you.